Alright, Great Text, I made a video to you and then some notes, and the notes got fucked up, didn't finish the video, found out the votes were bad, whatever. So I'm just going to do it over from my memory of things that rise to the level of my memory. First of all, yeah, I would hope you know I'm not coy about what I feel. If I have an ulterior motive, like if I'm trying to justify eating meat, it's very subconscious. It's not just barely, it's certainly not conscious. It's not barely subconscious. The logic could run around that in all the web of things I think, that it's like, oh yeah, because I see relationships, and I do eat meat. And it's a safe assumption, philosophically, to say I might have even conscious justification of that, or subconscious justification of that. But in this case, see, I'm not trying to consciously justify it. I don't think it is justified. Remember, I'm a relativist, right? So this means in a case like this, I believe in relative good. Not absolute good, but relative good. And it's relatively good to not eat animals. But it's also relatively good to treat animals better rather than worse while they're alive, and to euthanize them, to slaughter them, to not use a softer word, as humanely as possible. But it's pretty much impossible to do entirely. Now, I never said it was good to kill animals with bows and arrows, but you probably got that because I mentioned, which I really consider a different thing, related but from a different source of reasoning, is that at least with hunting, I have said, animals live in a natural way. And being hunted is part of that natural situation. So I just consider that better in that the animals live free lives instead of being abused their whole lives, which to me is an important part. Now, since that's the important part to me, and it's very difficult to do with animals, let's just imagine how difficult it is with plants. Well, it's not. If I plant a tree in my front yard, right? If I plant a tree in my front yard, I'm not abusing that tree just by doing that. It wants to stay in one place. If I tie a dog with a 1-inch, chain in the yard, that's exceedingly cruel. So I think we could see a few differences. There's a few other distinguishing factors now. But why would I bring up things like the animals killed by combines, harvesting? Well, because it does seem that maybe part of the reasons this has come as a surprise to me is that I didn't realize how purist. It's like, I don't eat meat, and therefore I don't eat anything that has any awareness. Well, no, you don't eat things that miss their loved ones, that have abstract conception enough to know they're on the way to their doom, things like this. Seems quite distinct, And by my evaluation, that means it's going to be easy and possible. It's possible to do with plants, to not be cruel. It's questionable if it can be done with mammals. And that's why the hunting comes in, because then there's like, okay, well, let's say keeping them, but what about if they're just in their natural state and I take part in that? Well, I think it's another issue. It's the issue of hunting, obviously related to vegetarianism, but it's also somewhat separable, let's say. We could talk about that. I'm not trying to avoid that. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. I think we can look into questions like of awareness of living things, and the chips have to fall where they may. A high-level thing about whether you want to eat meat or not, is not going to determine a physical reality like that. So let's not bother with that. And it's silly to say that's the only reason to look into it, and it's silly to say that I'm co-opting theist terms. Discussion of will goes back before Christianity was even founded. Maybe that's your bias, Great Tex. And you complain the terms are vague, but I'm going through the process of, I have gone through a process of clarifying the terms. My terms aren't that vague. I think consciousness is kind of vague, this touchy-feely kind. So to me, it means awareness. And this thing of that we think of as a human experience, for example, that has a lot to do with self-consciousness, of modeling yourself as an object in the world. That's not something I think even, it could be some, well, no, I think all mammals must do that, all vertebrates probably. Modeling yourself as an object like objects you see out there. That's an extra step. So many times people are like possessive of these feelings, pain and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I'm just talking about analogs. I'm not can you please try to imagine that when I say that, a white blood cell is aware that it's pursuing something, or aware that its sugar level is too low or something. It just has a feeling. It doesn't know, oh, my sugar level's too low. It just has a feeling like you have of hunger. Very primitive. And yet not your feeling of hunger. Your feeling of hunger comes from a neural system. Its parts are made of things I'm claiming have awareness. So it's awareness squared. So I think there's going to be some distinctive differences that you can use, that you probably already are implicitly using, to figure out if it's more ethical to not eat meat. But I don't think you get to think that that makes like some pure thing. It means you're not eating meat. You have to be absolutely, I want to do something that is absolutely good. I don't want to do it if it only gets me halfway to good. What's the problem there? I don't see that problem. And I've made concessions on language that you seem to be ignoring. Maybe you didn't hear, but I'm talking about awareness. Consciousness to me doesn't mean anything different. So I'm willing to use the word awareness because it means something to you guys. I wish you could explain what it was that meant. Seems like a touchy feeling, like you want this word like a solely. No. The words have to change. We're trying to make them more technical. And willpower versus free will. I've said for years I want to talk about willpower. People use the word free will. They make a video on free will. It's the topic. I'm responding to them. I think the two terms are interchangeable. I don't know many people that actually argue the freedom of the will means that you could do anything. No. Let me be clear. Willpower. The ability to choose between door 1 and door 2. There is no door 3, so you don't have the choice to go through door 3. It's not a possibility. To decide between possibilities. To play a role. How is that possible? Well, it's possible from the laws of physics. We know that because we're seeing it happen. And we know it's the laws of physics because that's what we call the rules that make physical things happen. Right? But maybe I should discuss the vegetarianism. I think if you were to take cattle just discreetly off, and they got they were, they had nitrous inhalation systems. The animals did, there was no pain. It was nice. They weren't cued to what was going on. Now, mind you, there'd still be other cattle in the field missing them. So taking away neural level, awareness squared kind of pain and negative things we don't want to put on other creatures. It's still a factor with animals. But it also would be better than all the animals in a chute watching the one in front of them getting a bolt to the head and being panicked for hours while they're put through this hellhole. Okay, so relative good. So it is a relatively better, a humane way of dealing with livestock. It's still worse than not killing them at all. And when you figure out you can live off of plants that are easy to treat that way. Now you want more than that. You've come to tell yourself that there's more, that's like you don't hurt things with internal awareness. Well, you be less vague. Does that go down to the bugs? Because I think we accidentally kill bugs. It's just lucky that awareness goes right down to a level that you have control to take yourself out of the natural process where you interfere with the life of other living creatures. Mostly, I think the truth part is like it's very difficult to talk about. It's too bad. I'd like to keep talking about it. I don't know when this is going to run out, or you're going to find it too frustrating. But it seems a bit like you're on both sides of the issue. The terms are too vague. Don't try to get more detailed about them. And maybe you don't know. You're telling me not to be more detailed about them. You want me to make up new words. Like what I'm talking about has nothing to do with what we mean by aware. Yeah, well, we're biased because we're human-centric. We thought we were in the center of the solar system, the center of the planet, the center of the center. We're always at the center. We're the center of everything. Man's the measure of all things because we're men. That's the only reason. All right. Cheers. I honestly think this question is worthwhile in its own right. We don't decide it based on how we want to feel about what we eat. Okay, I have a big problem with the fact that, I like indigenous cultures. They might hunt deer and then they worship the deer as, well, thank you, deer. They knew, they had to do the slaughtering. It's a terrible thing. They needed to do it to survive, and they seem to have compensated or dealt with that a little bit by having respect for the deer and realizing, thank you. Whereas the Christians are all like, well, it's just a stupid animal. It doesn't think anyway. I don't want to have to demonize the food. Now, I think it's possible to have a symbiotic consumptive relationship with things like vegetation. Quite possible in the case of like fruit and things. But even in weed and when you harvest a whole plant, I think that's possible. The nature of plants and humans, I think that's possible. I don't think it requires that the plant not enjoy the sunlight, because see, when you are growing the plant, you can give it lots of sunlight and give it a really good life, and you might harvest it just a short time before it would go to seed anyway. You see, and you can look at the specifics. I'm not saying don't look at the specifics. I don't think they have most of the things you guys are complaining about that are why you don't want to eat animals are things that, yeah, are mammal characteristics. If the mosquito enjoys drinking blood, doesn't mean that you can't swat it. Okay, and I think if corn enjoys basking in the sun, doesn't mean you can't eat corn. Okay, it doesn't follow, and I'm not saying that. All right, cheers.